The turning point came after World War II with the advent of a new technology. By measuring the fluorine content of fossils, scientists could roughly date them. So in 1949, scientists conducted a fluorine test on the Piltdown fossils. The results amazed them.
They showed that the remains were rather young, maybe 100,000 years old. Now that was really very strange, because one might make sense of Piltdown 1,000,000 years ago, but to have it so recent made no sense at all.
Finally, in 1953, scientists launched the first full-scale analysis with better dating methods. The Piltdown hoax was about to unravel.
Immediately it became plain that the staining on the bones was superficial, the artifacts had been stained, material which had been cut was probably cut when it was already fossil using a steel knife.
When the scientists looked at Piltdown man's teeth under the microscope, they got another shock.
There is some evidence for the fact that the teeth, in fact, have been filed down. There were sort of still scratch marks, deep scratch marks, obviously been made by some implement that had been used to sort of bring these molars down to a particular desired shape.
The jawbone dated back less than 100 years. It came from a female orangutan.
Pieces were broken off which could have shown that the jawbone did not belong with the skull. So they removed the pieces that would have shown the bones did not match directly. This canine tooth was filed down and rubbed down to make it much smaller.
In the front part of the jaw here, it's been broken off, which obviously takes away the telltale signs that it obviously is an ape and not a, quote, humanoid jaw.
All the evidence pointed to only one conclusion. Somebody had forged the Piltdown fossils. Scientists were stunned. Who would do such a thing, and why? Charles Dawson, the amiable amateur geologist, became the prime suspect.
He made the first finds at Piltdown and he made the last ones. And I think one has to believe that either he was duped all the way along or he was involved in it. That's powerful circumstantial evidence that Dawson was involved.
But what possible motive could he have had to deceive colleagues and friends?
He was a very ambitious man, and I think he had a clear motive. He wanted to be a fellow of the Royal Society. And a find like Piltdown was part of a campaign, a concerted campaign to acquire that scientific prestige.
Dawson had few scruples as he pursued his dream. He is now known to have forged at least half a dozen other archaeological finds. But Piltdown was in a class by itself. Could an amateur like Dawson have pulled it off alone without help from an expert? Few suspect Arthur Woodward of being the co-conspirator. Dawson clearly duped him. Woodward kept digging in the Piltdown gravel pit for decades after Dawson died, but never found anything. What about the third member of the original trio, Father Teilhard? He was curiously silent when the hoax came to light, but he wasn't at Piltdown long enough to have been the mastermind. As far as motive, Arthur Keith, the anatomist, may have had the strongest one. Piltdown Man provided him with the principal evidence for his pet theory on human evolution. But recently, a new suspect was added to the list. In 1975, these carved bones were found in an old trunk by a workman at the Natural History Museum. In 1996, scientists analyzed them and showed they were modern artifacts, stained just like the Piltdown fates. The trunk had apparently belonged to Martin Hinton, the young volunteer at the museum who later became a zoologist there.
The new evidence certainly brings Hinton into the story very, very much, because it is physical evidence. It's not circumstantial. There is the physical evidence there. We can show the staining on that material that was found in Hinton's trunk is the same chemically as the staining on the Piltdown material.
But the evidence of Hinton's motivation is weak, beyond a dislike of Woodward's overbearing personality. The objects in the trunk may have an innocent explanation. Perhaps Hinton made them as an experiment while helping to investigate the fraud in the 1950s. So more sleuthing must be done before scientists can finally solve the mystery of the Piltdown hoax. Even so, the hoax has taught scientists a painful but valuable lesson.
At the beginning of the century, there was this idea of scientists being scholars and gentlemen, and no one could possibly have thought someone would do something like this. That wasn't playing fair, that wasn't playing cricket. Now we know it could happen, and therefore we're alert to that possibility.
Ultimately, the science prevailed, and we were shown that this was to be incorrect, and so you throw it out and you get on with the business of getting on with the good science.
Good science depends on objectivity. When national pride or self-interest obscure this objectivity, then scientists become as vulnerable as the rest of us to lies, cheats, and deception.